And that is fan access. We got it all to ourselves. A little later today, thousands will come in. You saw the lightning. You know what that means. A storm is on the horizon. And in the WWF, that means it's the Undertaker. You know what? You always remember your first. Now, your first is not usually surrounded by this many cameras, and it doesn't usually last a half hour, but it's still so significant. It's a first today that we have the Undertaker on the show. But today he comes out of character. He gives us the inside story about his amazing life. His name is Mark Calloway, and we welcome him to Off the Record. Mark, nice to see you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for doing this, and it means so much. We do wrestling interviews, but we do them totally out of character, and that's what we're talking about today. So I want to start off by asking you, what's it like for you, even though you still go by the name, The Undertaker, to enter the ring in a motorcycle as Mark Calloway?
You know, it's still a rush. You know, after all the years that I did, you know, as I went with the, you know, the original Dead Man character, this is, you know, all those years people always wanted to, well, what's the other side? What's the other side? So I had a couple of real serious injuries. And I ended up taking some time off, and I said, you know what, it's time for me to freshen the Undertaker up and give the fans too something that they've always wanted to see. You know, and some people have accepted it, and some people are like, well, you know, it's not the same Undertaker. Well, it's the same Undertaker. It's just Undertaker evolved, is what it is. But it's a rush for me. You know, everybody knows that, you know, I'm big time into bikes and that whole life too, so it's a kick for me to come out there and just you know, show a different side of myself.
I'm fascinated by the origin of the Undertaker, and we know the evolution, but tell me the story of how the Dead Man came into being.
Well, the original Undertaker was the brainchild of Vince McMahon, and it's kind of a collaboration between Vince and myself. He had this idea that he always liked the image of that old Western-style Undertaker with the long black coat and the big black hat. And you know, he bestowed the name on me and then let me take the ball and run with it.
Now, you were right. You were out of work for a time. You were WCW. You're out of work. You go to meet with Vince. You actually met in his house. There's no work available. Then your phone rings, right?
Right, yeah, I'd left WCW. They didn't have much going on for me. So I had this meeting with Vince, and I said, well, I'm just going to, you know, I'm going to sweep Vince off his feet, and I'm going to go in there, and he's going to offer me a job right away. And that didn't happen. He said, well, you know, maybe at the beginning of the year we might have something, you know. So I basically left with no job, and I'd already left WCW, and I figured, well, I'd be going back to Japan or something like that. And, you know, one day I'm sitting at home and the phone rings, and, you know, I hadn't spoke with Vince too many times, you know, so I really didn't recognize the voice right away, but it was, hello, is this the Undertaker? You know, and, you know, I was a little bit taken back, like, you know, all right, who's calling me? Which one of my buds is calling me? And, you know, I don't know if they thought I was dead or what, but then it dawned on me that it was Vince, and I said, hell yeah, I'm the Undertaker. I'm your Undertaker, and the rest is pretty much history.
So that's where Hell Yeah started, too. You created it right there.
He gives me a little kickback here and there, you know. I got copyrights to it.
Do you like the fact that wrestling has evolved? You've been in the Federation for 12 years now, and 12 years ago this interview would never have taken place. Right. You would never have gone out of character. Is this progress, or is this a step back?
I think it's a sign of the times. Our audience is much more in tune to what we do, and I think just as much what happens behind the scenes now is just as much important to them as what happens in the ring.
Do you like it better, though?
Yes and no.
What's the no part?
The no part is, you know, there are certain things that happen backstage that it's no one's business. You know.
What's the kind of thing that gets revealed now that isn't our business that wouldn't have been revealed 12 years ago?
Well, who may be coming in? You know, who's you know, you try and use the element of surprise a lot of times in your TV shows. And there's wrestlers coming in or whatever a storyline may be, or, you know, now there's the whole internet thing that goes on that just you know, it really makes it hard for us to do our job and do our job well sometimes.
So take us into the locker room. I hear that you're a general back there. I hear that actually once upon a time, and this was a while ago, that Shawn Michaels was debating whether or not he was actually going to do the job, and you looked at him before he went through the curtain and said, do the job. Do you have that kind of role backstage right now, and in particular when it relates to the new guys who are actually the old guys, NWO?
That title's kind of been bestowed on me. I mean, it was nothing that I actually went out and politicked for or anything like that. I take a lot of pride in what I do, and I have a lot of pride in Vince McMahon and the fact that he gave me an opportunity to be very successful in life. And my number one agenda, and probably the why I'm known as the locker room leader, is the fact that I put the business before everything else. I don't have my own agenda. I have our business's agenda. So yeah, everybody, you know, you have to do business. And if
do they have to answer to you backstage if they screw up? Do you force them to answer to you? I mean, you talk about any locker room of a professional sports team that is successful has a leader that is the disciplinarian. Can't come from the coach because the coach isn't one of the guys.
I think overall, I think a lot of people look to me for answers on how to deal with situations, especially when something's going on. But we have a total way of policing ourselves before it has to get up to the upper office, and I take that role seriously because I think there's a lot of times that things can be nipped in the bud in the dressing room at the heat of the moment before things.
So how do you handle NWO in particular? You're talking about three guys that came over from WCW that undeniably were a cancer in the locker room. I mean, that organization went down, died essentially because the egos in a lot of ways were too big.
Yeah, that's true, and those guys came in with a huge rap on them. You know, I mean, I dealt with them all before in their previous stints here. So I'd be lying if I told you I didn't have my reservations about them coming in, because of what happened down there. Now I wasn't there, but hearsay, and and the people that had already come up before those guys, they had their opinions of how they were doing things. So they're back to the dressing room, and as many young guys that we have, I had a lot of reservations about this element coming in and influencing our younger talent and making bad decisions but so far those guys have been fine. But
you'll keep an eye on them, right?
No doubt.
Okay.
Not only me, I think everybody will. It's a different. The WWF locker room is completely different from what those guys have ever probably been around. That's a close-knit group of guys. You know what? They all out there to do business, and there's no time for all the BS.
Great.
And,
you know what? We got a lot more to talk about. His name is Mark Calloway. One of the things I got to ask you is Hell in the Cell. We'll talk to this man about maybe the most famous match ever when OTR returns. Stay with us.